My truck is pulling to the side right at the end when I'm stopping like 0 miles an hour, you know, almost to a very complete stop. Suddenly the brake engages or the ABS engages and pulls the wheel to the right. So I looked it up on the internet, and some people were saying that when the ABS sensor goes out on one side, it'll pull to the other side. I already replaced the bearing on the right because the ABS sensor comes apart when you remove it. It doesn't come out as a complete unit. So I'm going to have to replace the bearing on the driver's side now, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Alright, after the wheel is off, caliper has to come off and this has to come off, which is just removed by those bolts, those nuts there, and then the rotor and this extension will come off. These caliper bolts are very hard to turn, and there's no good angle for turning them down here. You know, if you had the truck up on a lift, you'd be able to just put a long bar that's 36 inch or whatever and hop them free. But down here, what I do is I'll install a breaker bar sort of oriented this way, and then I'll take a pry bar and I'll use the leaf spring as leverage to force that to turn, and that works really good for me. This is the sensor clip, and it just has where it attaches here, it's got it kind of becomes a button right in there that you push, and then you pull the things apart. Ford did an awesome job designing these little plugs. I think they're always easy to come off. This tiny bolt right here allows you to remove that bracket from the sensor. This is another pry bar trick. Take a pry bar, use it to prevent spin while loosening up those nuts, and that way you don't have to sit here puzzling on how to keep that rotor from turning when you're trying to remove these nuts right here. You cannot impact those off. My mechanism isn't stock, but once you get your mechanism out from there, which is a pretty basic thing, some kind of a spring clip or something holds it in. Then you have these washers inside there, and there's a spring clip here. It's got the two holes lined up are right there. You do need a special pair of pliers to open that up and remove it. You could be here all day trying to get that with the wrong tools. For this part of the process, you'll need a chrome socket because the sidewalls on an impact socket are normally going to be too thick. There are 4 bolts that go from the back into this right here. Once those bolts are removed, it should be possible to remove this bearing. I already got this off. It's kind of too easy. But basically, you're gonna have your nut still on there, and you need them kind of diagonal to each other. So you need like this one and then that one down there. When your little extension will be on there like that, but not the ratchet. Okay, and then from there you'll take, you know, a metal hammer and bop that thing. It's no good angles back there, but that's a great way to break this loose. They're not that hard to break loose compared to a Dodge. I was able to do it without that trick. I just sort of struck around the outer edges of the bearing. It's a bad bearing anyway, so I'm not super worried about it. I would think it could endure a couple blows from a dead blow hammer regardless if I felt like I was going to keep it. But this gets you to that outer shaft seal. And then once the outer shaft seal, basically that axle will just come right out if you ever needed to get that. There's outer shaft seal, which is a bearing and a seal at the same time. And then there's a seal in there. So if you ever needed to get that, or if you were doing your U-joints, that's how you would get your U-joint out. You would actually strike that seal from the back, where you would pry against the knuckle of this axle, and it would force that seal out. But just beware, if you're planning to remove this axle, get ready for a tough time, because that seal is extremely hard to get on and off without destroying it, and you need a special tool to install it. You install it to the axle first, and then you install it to the hub area, and it is just a huge nightmare. So best of luck if that's what you're doing. I've got the bearing on here now. The new bearing comes with studs. I put the studs into the bearing. You know, the studs are screwed in right here, and then, you know, there's a nut on the back. So I put the studs onto the bearing back before I install it. Then I just pop that bad boy in there and put the nuts on the back, and then tighten it to the appropriate amount. I basically use a 24-inch breaker bar and tighten it down as much as I can. These washers go in this order. There's regular looking washer, hexagonal washer, and then regular looking washer. This system is reversible if the regular washers are the same. This is an example of the tool I use for the spring clip. There are generic versions of this that you can use, but you need the tips of the tool to be the correct size for this hole, or it'll slip off. You just squeeze these and it makes it wider. Okay, this is the worn kit. I'll show you how this basically goes. This is already together, but there's a spring clip here that's retaining this inner component. This side it goes to the outside. In here is where you put your spring and your other components. That Phillips head screw is accessible from the outside. This is a spring clip here. It separates like that, and you just feed it right in. This gear looks like it goes both ways, and the Phillips head screw actually gets taken out, and then this goes over the spring, and then you just tighten it in. This is the cover. It has these 3 metal tabs. It has an O-ring on the outside here. 6 of these bolts right here, tiny Allen. extension is on. Caliper has to go on. Don't twist the hose, and plug in the sensor, and that's it. Put the wheel on and you're done.